As ever, I'm really grateful to you for your various comments on the posts which I make on YouTube. And one which has stuck out today is by Martin Thodey. And he points out very clearly the question, were the rules broken, is actually irrelevant when it comes to Boris and the Partygate. We know they were broken. The question really is two sides of the question. Number one, he points out, why were these draconian rules introduced in the first place? Number two, were they knowingly broken? Number three, once it was known that they were broken, why did Boris not go to the House of Commons and correct the misunderstanding that he had created? And finally, why was there a division between the behaviour in number 10 and the behaviour that was expected of everybody else? That issue of hypocrisy. And I think in the end it's the issue of hypocrisy which is probably the most important issue in dealing with the Boris Johnson Partygate thing. And I think there will have to come a point when the top level of government is simply going to have to cast Boris to one side and knowingly do so, because Boris is a millstone round their necks. The fact that Rishi was also fined by the police for eating cake, I think also needs to be discussed. And the longer Boris remains in the limelight over this, the more this compromises the authority of the current Prime Minister because of that cake-eating moment. Now, it may just be a technical bit of cake, but it is nevertheless. It nevertheless gives the impression that Rishi is as enmired in hypocrisy as is Boris. I think that's not actually the case. I think there's a big distinction between Boris and Rishi Sunak. But as I say, the longer this goes on, the more this distinction is going to have to be examined and clarified. And if people want to, if people want to move forward with government, and I think we do, we still have 2 years of this present government to go. If we want to get anything done, we have to get Boris out of the way. Boris is a distraction, as are all of those people who support him. I also think the performance today by Chris Heaton-Harris on Laura Newsberg's, sorry I mispronounced that name, program is significant because he broadened the scope of the migrant issue. He broadened it in the right direction. I can't be sure that scope is going to continue to be seen in that with that sort of broad view. If it isn't, it's a mistake. The only way to look at the migrant issue is to look at it through the prism of Brexit and the failure to implement a treaty like the Dublin III. To talk about migrants being housed in the first safe country they come to is to assume we are still under the Dublin III agreement. That isn't so. And I'm sure Chris Heaton-Harris is as aware as I am that that sort of language is absurd. The reason people want to come to the UK is because they speak the language, because we've been teaching it and exporting it for so long and so successfully, because we've made a lot of money out of that market, by the way, because people have relatives and links in this country, and also Of course, because people think this is a country where they can get rich. And I think a Conservative government should find it very difficult to question that last motive. So there is a lot to unpick and a lot to unpack. But thank you, Martin Thodey, for bringing that question up. Why was the nation under house arrest? I don't know. And why was I think probably the better question is, why was the nation under house arrest if number 10 was not?